Well, thank you so much, first of all, Dr. Bach, that for finding me and then inviting me to your show. Yes, I'm not a politician, but I am an accidental activist. I think it's probably a better word. And so let me tell your audience a little bit about me. I'm Chinese, and I grew up in South China. I spent my first 26 years in South China. And when the Cultural Revolution started, and people by now probably heard a little bit about the Chinese Cultural Revolution. It's important to know because that's exactly what we're having here today in America. When the Chinese Cultural Revolution started, I was in my second semester of my first grade. And that the Cultural Revolution lasted for 10 years, from 1966 to 1976. So I experienced and witnessed the whole entire Cultural Revolution. And the revolution ended when Mao died. So when I graduated from high school in 1975, there was nothing for us, nothing for any of the young graduates from urban areas. But Mao had planned for us. Mao sent us to the countryside to get re-educated by the peasants. And by now, many Americans getting familiar with this term, re-education. Yes, we were sent to the countryside, and I worked in the countryside in the fields, doing hard labor for 3 years until Deng Xiaoping finally ascended to power. And he reopened the university. And so in 1978, I was able, at the age of 19, which I feel like I was fortunate that I did not waste all my youth. And I was able to go to college and study English. And after that, I was assigned to work in the college to train middle school and high school teachers. And I worked there for, I think, 3 or 4 years. And I was so lucky, I was able to get assistantship and come to America to pursue my graduate study. That was 1986. So I've been here for a long time. And I just quickly tell you what happened here. Typical. Come here and we have our eyes on the American dream. Mm-hmm. Want the education, want to get a good job, and buying a house and raise a family, and then all come true. And I'm absolutely the beneficiary of the American dream. Never thought I would be getting into politics or getting involved one day. And I basically paid no attention to politics. I voted for every presidential election just because I thought that is a right that I should cherish, because that's something we never had. But I have no idea about the politics. And so I started to see troubling signs here or there, but it was not until 2020 when I just really tell myself, this is no longer some kind of troubling signs here or there. This is a full-blown Marxist revolution. It is what I have experienced and witnessed in China, and I can no longer just be as an observer. So 2020, I got myself involved. I joined the local Republican committee and eventually went to the school board of Loudoun County in Virginia. And I made a 1 minute, less than 1 minute, but we're giving only 1 minute. I managed to say what I needed to say during that 1 minute and compare the CRT and the indoctrination of American children to what I've experienced in China, to the Cultural Revolution. And that went viral. So this not was my plan, but I found myself in the national spotlight. And you know what? I welcomed it. Yeah, I have been in this country for 37 years. I love this country. And this is time for me to pay back.
Well, thank you. I think we are in your debt partially. I'm glad you chose to come here. I think it's a very reasonable perspective. I was mentioning earlier that my wife and I had spent some time behind the Iron Curtain in Soviet East Europe, in Czechoslovakia, Hungary, Yugoslavia, and East Germany. And we spent a number of weeks there. We were on bicycles, so we saw a lot of the parts of the country and the countryside that people don't really recognize. And there's kind of a romanticism about socialism and about communism and so forth that somehow never really seems to percolate through to its reality. I think this is a long-standing problem. Goes back to the New York Times reporter in Moscow, Walter Duranty, who kind of put, essentially lipstick on the pig, who didn't report accurately about the Soviet famines, the Holodomor in Ukraine, and so forth. And people have a kind of a romantic view that all the workers are marching together, and there's some kind of solidarity, and everyone's at peace because they all earn the same amount. And even the name, frankly, Cultural Revolution, doesn't sound all that bad.
It sounds like you have some kind of rebirth of like a renaissance. No, it's absolutely not.
So tell us a little bit about what the Cultural Revolution, what that meant, and what it was. I had some questions prepped as well. Let's see how this segues with my question. So let's try this question. How did your personal experiences during Mao's Cultural Revolution shape your understanding of the current situation in the U.S. With regards to the spread of critical race theory? So that's kind of a formulaic question, but maybe you could attack that and or the sense about the name, the Cultural Revolution, what that actually hides.
Actually, I think I have to explain a little bit why there was such a thing as Cultural Revolution, and I have to go back 17 years earlier, and so be patient with me, and it will make more sense once you know why Mao launched the Cultural Revolution. So the Chinese Communist Party, CCP, took power and took over China in 1949. Okay, and then one of the first things they did was the land reform. The land reform, this is so important for people to understand. The land reform was not just confiscate land from the landowners and give to the peasants, because that's what Mao promised those people. Those people followed Mao and carried out his revolution because they want free land. Okay, so no, you can't just wait there and get a free land, and you have to struggle. You have to fight. Actually, eventually you have to kill in order to get your land. So that is during that time that Mao implemented political identity. That is when the Chinese people every one of them get identity, get a label. What are the labels? Mao divided China into categories, and to just make it simpler, it's just by class. Okay, there is a bourgeois class. That means you own property, you own land, and then by definition, you're the enemy of the revolution of the state. So black class, and then the rest, poor or proletarian, are the red class. So that is so important because that's what's happening here, and that's been going on for a long time. Instead of class, they use race, and instead of race, now they use identity. They expand it. They never stop. They continue to expand. So now we know people who have no identity. For example, if you're white, you're male, you have no identity, right? In the sectionality, you're just, white male, the ultimate oppressor. But now you have a way out. You can identify yourself as whatever. Once you do that, you got identity, and you become the red class in Mao's word. But that is important before I go on. So, and after that, and there were just nonstop campaigns, political campaigns. In the late 50s, Mao launched this absolutely madness of a political campaign called Great Leap Forward. So he believed that just by mobilizing the entire nation, he was able to surpass Great Britain and the United States of the steel production. Like Great Britain, 10 years, United States by 15 years. So everybody was mobilized. The peasants, everybody, forget about the farm work. Everybody start to make steel. How? You make steel in the backyard. So they have like a homemade furnaces. Everybody has to produce so much, a quota system. And one of the thing people did is they just find anything at home, doorknob, wok, in utensils, and then just make it into steel so that they can finish the quota. And after that, of course, it's pure disaster. After that, we had the Great Famine. The famine lasted for 3 years, killed up to 50 million Chinese, and the West had no idea about it because it's a closed society. Okay, that was quite a bit of disaster that no one can ignore it, because that Mao was put on the back seat. He has to admit the mistake in front of like a 7,000 party, like a official meeting. And so the other official took over the leadership, trying to get China back to, improve the economy. And that was 1963. Can you imagine a dictator was put on the back seat? Yeah, that's Mao. No way. So China kind of experienced like a 3-year kind of relatively peaceful time. And that was the time he planned for a comeback.
So it's his revenge tour.
Yeah. So 1966, he launched the Chinese Cultural Revolution for 2 big reasons. First, take back power. And how? He could have, I guess, used the military, but that doesn't look right? It looked like he had a coup. He did not even have to do it. He had a better army. Guess what that army was? Millions of kids. From elementary school to college. They indoctrinated kids in government schools and government universities. They're called the Red Guards. And today, I say we have the same thing. And the only difference is that they are red. They are not red. They're blue. We have blue guards doing exactly the same thing. Okay.
Well, that's also black. I mean, I think Antifa is, in a sense, the mobilized quasi-militaristic aspect. Yeah. Hitler had, the Hitler Youth and the brown shirts. So it doesn't really matter whether it's red, brown, black, or blue. It's the same basic concept. It's
same
way of the government favoring certain types of vocal and actual physical violence.
Anyway, that's what he mobilized. He mobilized the youth to do what? To take over power from what? From CCP, bureaucrats. So that's what the Cultural Revolution, the goal was to seize power from all levels of CCP. Basically, it is a revolution against the CCP, against his own government, against his own institution, because he wants the power back. Okay, so that's the goal. So all the leaders, the the officials, every one of them, from low to the village leaders up to the president of China. His name is Liu Shaoqi. He was the #1 victim of the Cultural Revolution. He was ousted and later died because they denied him medical treatment. He died in misery. And so that is Cultural Revolution. Okay, that's power. But what did they do? What did they do apart from taking power from all level of government? Cancel culture. Okay, There's a different word. We did not use the word cancel culture. What Mao said was abolition of four odes. What are the four odes? Old ideas, old culture, old custom, and old habits. They all have to go. All of them have to be destroyed out of the window and replaced by what? By the most radical version of Marxism, Maoism. And that is what they did. They ousted the leadership, took the power. Meanwhile, they destroy the Chinese civilization. And that's exactly what's going on here. Anything tradition, anything American has to go because they are either white supremacists or whatever, they have to go. So
yeah, they're good with labels. They're good with labeling anything.
Oh, yeah.
It's so sad and reductive. The founders are called, old white men. They were in their 20s. Like James Madison was 25, I think, at the time of the Declaration of Independence. And these were men who put their lives on the line. The American Revolution is different. Right? A lot of things are called revolution. There was the French Revolution very shortly thereafter. The American Revolution was different from the Cultural Revolution, from the Chinese Revolution, and so forth. It's again kind of a misuse of terms. The American Revolution was probably the one that brought the most and lasting and greatest lasting peace and influence over the world in a positive, benign way that allowed people self-determination, creating constitutional republics where there were rules. People think we have a democracy, but it's always interesting to me that most of your communist countries always call themselves the People's Democratic
People something, yeah.
See, they got the people and they got the Democrat. And this is kind of a confounding of terms. And I suppose they have republic as well. But these terms don't really have weight and meaning. Democracy at its base, even the Greeks understood that democracy could be a tyranny of the majority. Democracy can be three wolves and a sheep voting on dinner, and it's going to be the sheep. So the real key is not just to have democracy, but to have a preservation of minority rights. Yeah. So that the sheep gets to vote on something else being dinner, and that requires a rule book, that requires a constitution, and makes a republic. And so that's kind of the base of the words we have, Democrats and Republicans. But in the concept of Mao's China, I suppose it was just everything kind of gets washed away. I think the whole thing is kind of like a brainwashing of type, and also people washing. And we think of brainwashing where you're going to somehow have your ideas washed out of you. That's impossible. But what you can have is the fear of even mentioning those ideas and holding true to those ideas. And kind of the essence of conservatism is to conserve that which has been helpful to create your society and cohesion and the love in your family. But it seems as if those were all kind of broken, abrogated, and destroyed within the context of the Maoist revolution. That is to say that the family was no longer the unit of power. There has to be some kind of dissolution, some dissolving of that. So how did that play out, say, within your own family? And how did that play, if you remember those times? And how did people act or react when they had to point out the cultural traitors in their midst? I mean, I assume that happened, that people have to come up with a certain number of enemies in order to keep the machine of this cultural revolution revolving.
Yeah. I want to just add to what you just said. Revolution, the word revolution is used for American Revolution and for French Revolution and the Cultural Revolution. What's the difference? American Revolution is a revolution to conserve. It's a revolution to separation from the British rule, and it's to conserve the traditional values. And so the Marxist revolution and the French Revolution together, it's a radical revolution. It's about destruction of everything that before them, like the French Revolution. That's the mother of more Marxist revolutions. So anyway, the revolution is to destroy everything before them. That include family. That definitely include religion, all religions. In China, there are all sorts of religions, and the Chinese religion, it's not really religion, but it's like a practice that's Confucianism, and it has to be destroyed. Actually, the Red Guards went to the temple and the birthplace of Confucius and destroyed it, and just destroyed it. It is so unthinkable. It's almost like a Jews went to destroy the temple and then the wall of the Wailing Wall. It's like the Christians went there and destroyed the whole Jerusalem. That kind of thing. It's it's just what they did. And religion, family was always the first one to go. And now I go back to the beginning of 1949 when they took over China. Apart from doing the land reform, they also took over the schools and universities, and all the teachers had to be retrained, especially public school, or they have to be retrained, seriously retrained. They have to pass examinations before they were let go back to the classroom to teach something new. That's Marxism. And then the parents were told, your children no longer belong to you. They belong to the party, and they belong to the country. We are the successors of the communist cause. And we sing songs, and they're still saying it today in China, that the mother's dear, father's dear. No one is as dear as Chairman Mao. And the earth is vast, the sky is vast, but nothing is as vast as the kindness of the party. And that's what we're taught. We belong to the party. So it went to the extreme during the Cultural Revolution, and we were encouraged to catch all the counter-revolutionary in the midst of us, including your parents. And many people did that. Many children did that. And many stories of children reporting their parents to the party member because they said something at home that was not, that was identified as the anti-party. Many parents were executed because of that. And not just, they report each other. The snitch, right? It's called snitch culture, was absolutely commonplace. You don't even trust your own spouse because your spouse can report you. And that's what's going on today in America. And in Loudoun School, the Loudoun County Public School, they have a program called bias reporting system. Encourage the students to report each other. And that is just so, what happened in the Cultural Revolution is no one trusts anyone else. So many people betrayed by their family, by their friends, by their colleagues, by their neighbors. And that's happened in the French Revolution as well. So what else?
We see that here and now. I've been betrayed by friends because it's a sadness. I've been very forthright with my ideas. Just a simple one. We're not going to do medicine here, but this concept of immunizing people after they've been sick is something that Dr. Fauci said was absurd in 2006. He said, I'll do my Fauci voice, there's no reason you should ever think about having a vaccine after you've had the flu. You've had the flu, you don't get the vaccine, you're as perfectly immunized as you ever can be. And so 2006, he said that I would point things out like that and say, I'm all in favor of vaccines. I think vaccines are wonderful, but you do them beforehand. I don't want to talk about that. That's a different day, different topic. But I've had friends, scream at me. I want to talk a little bit about the struggle sessions. People feel completely within their rights to scream at you.
Yeah.
And I've just never seen anything like it. I've been shouted at on Facebook by long-term friends. We've shared holidays. We've been places together where our kids have had party, whatever, all these kind of like, religious and yearly holidays. And one of my friends, screams, he brings up my posts to shame me in front of everybody. And at my various clubs, I belong to a tennis club and a squash club. I've had people feel completely within their rights to come up to me and scream into my face, like 2 inches away. At one point I was talking with a mother when one of the vaccines was coming out, and she had a 9-year-old playing squash. And I said, look, I'm not your doctor and so forth, but has she been sick with this already? To that other point, yes, she's already had the illness. I was just talking about whether this is the right thing to do. This guy comes into and he overheard it. He's never met me before. He started screaming at my face and how I'm killing people and how basically I'm an enemy of the state in a sense. And this is just a whole shaming thing we've seen all throughout medicine. And where doctors have, in California, they had a law, I think AB 2098 or something like that, or 1098, where to speak against the word of the state would take away your medical license. And people have been defrocked and disbarred and unlicensed for following their medical conscience as opposed to what the state dictates. Anyway, so I apologize for that diversion. But
no, that's exactly what happened in the Chinese Cultural Revolution, the struggle session. The word is from that time period. Struggle session is basically denunciation of a public trial of someone, a bureaucrat or whoever that said something or did something that was not in line with the party instruction. We'll have them struggled against. And the norm usually what happens is they will wear a big sign in front of them with their name crossed out and with some kind of the description of their sin. And I have seen so many of them. I've seen them struggle against someone, very low ranking. I've also witnessed the struggle session for the governor of my province, Sichuan province. And so it is left and right. And nowadays here is like what you described, or online struggle session. Like right now is the Moms of Liberty. Moms of Liberty, you know that what happened, right? Now it's an online struggle session everywhere in Twitter and Facebook against Moms of Liberty because one of the branch quoted Hitler.
Yeah, I don't think they were quoting Hitler in the sense of advocating Hitler. I think they were quoting Hitler the way Hitler misused the youth. I mean, I think it was with irony.
No. Yeah, exactly. Hitler said he alone who
controls the youth, controls the future.
Yeah, control the future.
Why that's exactly what Mao did.
Exactly. That's
the purpose of it. So, and the thing is, the difference between, people think Hitler's bad, but they can't see Stalin and Mao as bad. This is like a Hitler's been consigned to the right wing, and somehow Maoism and communism, Hugo Chavez and Kim, the Kims of North Korea and so forth, somehow they get a softer touch because they're communists. And so for some reason, like the Nazis are fascists and the communists are I don't know, they don't get the same look, but they're doing the same exact thing. The only real
the same thing
is that I like to put this out. I learned this maybe a decade ago, 15 years ago, but hadn't really put much thought to it. But the Nazis were the NDSAP, the National
Democratic
Arbeiter and Socialist Arbeiter Party. So it's basically this National Democrat Socialist Workers Party, which sounds pretty communist to me.
It is.
And what Hitler, frankly, Mussolini and Hitler, they put a little special sauce into the communism. The communism, Lenin and Marx was the workers. It was basically the international workers of the world unite. So they were looking for a class differential, like you speak about. And they weren't finding that wasn't really catching on the way it should. And so the twist on that was to do national instead of international socialism. And the theme song, the anthem of the Soviets was the Internationale. They wanted to be international. They wanted to spread communism everywhere. And the difference was that what they had instead was national socialism, and they were going to go by race. And they were going to go, instead of by class, they're going to go by race and ethnicity. And so that's really the only tweak. But otherwise, it was still this amalgam of the basically the crony this kind of cronyism, which forms fascism, was to get the companies in line and subservient to the state. So we're seeing a lot of that here with these power tools of ESG and Title IX, affirmative action, a bunch of tweaks that the government controls the companies, and the companies acquiesce, and therefore they get favored. So there's a lot of this cronyism that's happening, and what's the common denominator of all these is the people, the bourgeois people, I guess, the people who work and so forth. They're mean well, take care of their families. Those they're just the tools, and they're kind of, I think, trodden and destroyed by these massive state apparatuses and ideas, these big utopian ideas. They're going to remake the world in some better model where people have been working for thousands of years, and the models that have worked, and somehow, some guy like Mao is going to come up with a better idea out of his own head and fix everything. And I think it always comes down to the fact that those people can stay in power by keeping everybody fighting amongst each other. Maybe they have some utopian ideal, but it never seems to come to fruition.
No, it never. It's all about power. So I try to tell people that you think it's all about utopia, that they want to try to make it. No, it's all about power. Everything is about the power. And so you talk about I lost my train of thought. Anyway, go on.
Yeah. So let me see if I can get some questions back to, let's see, where were we? There we go. So let's see. So you mentioned the goal of achieving absolute power as a common thread between the two revolutions. How do you see this goal being pursued in the United States through the promotion of CRT?
Well, CRT is just like what we have discussed. The CRT is the American Marxist way of divide people, just like what Mao did using class. CRT is about using race. And now we don't hear much about CRT. Do you notice in the past year or two? Because BMM ruined it. BMM actually now is like it go bankrupt ideologically. People saw through it. And so they have to kind of change strategy. Now, it's kind of like a CRT. Yeah, you don't hear. Now it's everything trans, right? Everything trans. Everything about not even trans. It's about what do you call it? You identify yourself to be whatever. You can be non-binary. You can be fluid. You can be whatever. So the one of the way to describe, or the common way when people say, how do you describe the Chinese Cultural Revolution? Most people say it's a world turned upside down. Or the social norms, everything was questioned, everything was challenged. And I said, in that sense, I think the Cultural Revolution here in America has surpassed that in China. Now we have the world turned so upside down that we don't know what a woman is.
No, it's crazy. I want to maybe touch on this briefly, but there's China had the one-child policy. Basically, a lot of these, any of these transsexual transitions, whatever you want to call it, this is the zero-child policy.
Yeah, exactly.
Zero-child. Not only is it a zero-child policy, but it's a medical case. We have this term called case finding in medicine, which is used to be a good thing, where somebody comes in for a sore throat, but you hunt for other problems. So you say, oh, you're also smoking. Maybe we should do a chest X-ray. You're hunting for cases to find some unknown illness. But transitioning is the perfect case finding, because you've created a customer medically forever. You one day you cut off the genitals, and the next, months after month for years, you have to provide hormones, you have to provide therapy, you have to provide all kinds of grooming, cosmetic, this and that. This is a nonstop business, and it's like so you're taking the people, it's just a sadness. I feel as if it's a predatory action on children who are the obviously the most vulnerable. They all become humans. I mean, it's hard for people to believe, but I was a child once, and I imagine you were. And every adult I know came from a mother and a father. Nobody I know came from somebody who had, sterilized himself or herself by cutting off the genitals and adding or subtracting secondary sexual characteristics. This is the way life has always been. And somehow this is, again, it's almost a kind of a Marxian concept. And I think you bring it up at one of your quotes I saw at your book is, that man will follow science under Mao, that somehow they're going to follow science. But science, the real key to this is that science first has to be corrupted. Science has to bend to the state, and then you're going to follow that science. But that science is only really a stalking horse, a masked kind of a masquerade for actual science. And what we see now is we see the turning of the scientific institutions. We're in medicine. I was, saying there's this video out, an 8-year-old boy goes to the doctor, and the doctor's like, are you a boy or a girl? Now, this is only starting recently. What do you feel like? Do you feel like you want to change? These are suggestions for our most vulnerable people. And these are all our future adults, the future caretakers of our society. And if they can't quite, kids don't want this. They don't want the morass, the quicksand of all these political ideas. What they want is they want stability. They want a scaffolding, like a plant on which to grow. When they reach a certain height and a certain size, they can make decisions of that type, maybe. But this kind of inculcation, this breeding in of ideas is very redolent of the re-education you're talking about, and the kind of the switching around that we've seen. Anyway, so people here at one point they were very much taken with the killing fields. Did you ever see that movie?
Yes.
So the Cambodian revolution, I'm assuming, was a Maoist revolution as well.
Yes, Mao style revolution, exactly.
Yeah. So let's just kind of get to your political pathway. Do you find allies? Have you been, shamed? I notice now that Asian Americans who agree with the affirmative action, takedown by the Supreme Court, they are now white supremacists, correct?
Yeah, I just tweeted today. Yeah, they have an article said that the Asian American conservative choose to be allies of white supremacy. I said, okay, so they just redefine the word or the term white supremacy. Again, they redefine, and redefine. Now it means equal rights for all. It means that color blindness. Okay, so that if that's the case, yes, Asian Americans conservative embrace those principles. They are American principles.
Any conservative, I think this color stuff is kind of crazy. People are identifying one way or another. There's that movie, I don't know if you ever saw, Leonardo DiCaprio, Tom Hanks, Catch Me If You Can. It was a guy, he was his name was Frank Abagnale. And he's from, I think, New Rochelle, New York. And he was a great masquerader. He pretended he was a pilot. He pretended he was a doctor. And he had a life of scamming people and doing this. He flew airplanes. He treated patients. He pretended he was a lawyer and all this kind of stuff. And he was writing and kiting checks. He was doing massive fraud and living this crazy life. But I suppose during those times he identified as an airline pilot. Do people really want? Let's say we take away the color part. Would you like to go see a doctor who identifies as a doctor, but he's actually a plumber? And I'm not sure I want my plumber who's actually a doctor identifying as a plumber. I think there has to be a sense where people have a veracity of the skills and so forth, and people need to get away from some kind of the superficiality of skin color. And it's just kind of a sadness. Martin Luther King, I think, we have a holiday for him, but his genuine ideas and ideals seem to be thrown aside, wherein we would judge people by the content of their character rather than the color of their skin. So getting back to the schools, what happened in Loudoun County? I know there was the election of Youngkin, and that really pivoted, in a sense, on this. But tell us a little bit about kind of what's been going on, and what are our paths forward?
Well, we did absolutely launched. I call it parent revolt, and it caught on nationwide. So we were the epicenter for that movement. So we helped to Youngkin to get into the office, but we failed to change the Loudoun County itself and the school board and the board of supervisors still dominated by the Democrats. And you know what they do. They will resist any changes from from Richmond, from governor. So we have to, now we're working hard to get a new school board member into the board. And without that, you cannot change the policy. You cannot change their curriculum. So it is a fight. And I always say, politics is local. We have to take over our schools to save those kids. And I have to say, the Chinese Cultural Revolution was just absolutely a disaster. And it killed more than 20 million people. And of course, including kids. But my experience in school is the indoctrination of the mind. And here I would say that the American Marxists almost like more evil. They not only indoctrinate the mind of our children, but they actually harm their bodies. And so we really have to do more to save our kids.
The Soviet in the gulags, there was a political. There were political prisoners, but there were also criminal prisoners in the same gulag. So there would be a horrible punishment, presuming they didn't execute you, which I suppose is worse. But it's a debatable point because you're winding up in Siberian hard labor and freezing territories. It's kind of an endless concentration camp. So the political prisoners were mixed in with the common criminals, and the criminals had a huge tattooing system. And you see that now, and obviously in our prisons. But tattoos were much more dangerous then because they were done, rudimentarily without the devices we have. But it was clearly a mark. It's an indelible mark of who you are. And tattooing. The Nazis tattooed their victims in the concentration camps to prove who they are. They could never escape that. And this is kind of obviously a step beyond tattooing. This is an indelible mark. And the regrets that people have, it's just it boggles the mind. There's so much sadness. I think you and I both saw The Sound of Freedom recently, and I recommend it for our listeners. I'm going to pay it forward and buy some tickets. I wish my friends would go. I know they won't. It becomes a kind of this vast divide where people hear something. They hear this, where the way they want to put, Hitler on the Moms for Liberty, and they want to put QAnon on Sounds of Freedom.
Yeah,
this is always a political marking. They try to personalize and take down the victim and isolate. These are Alinskyite tactics, which are basically the same kind of Marxist-Leninist, Maoist tactics of isolating and shaming. Anyway, so that's not a question. So I apologize for that. Let's see if we can get back to one of my framework questions here. So what are some of the ways in which coercion is being employed to advance the agenda of CRT, and how does this compare to the methods used in Mao's Cultural Revolution?
You create a culture. That's what's in the Cultural Revolution. You create a culture. If you speak up. And you will be, that is even, it happened even before the Cultural Revolution. And if you speak up, you will be punished. And the punishment can vary from demotion to a gulag or imprisonment or death. So the culture was there, so everyone had to follow the party line. And many of the people during the Cultural Revolution, and people say, some are against Mao. No one was against Mao. No one dared to. The fight is who was more loyal to Mao. So it's absolutely you want to absolutely virtue signaling to everyone. that you are not only on the right side, but you are in it 200%. And that's the computation. So that is all lies, and people lie to each other. People just do things that they feel like they're compelled to do. So you don't even need coercion, because it's already in place. It's become the culture. And now it's become the culture here. People self-censor. You don't have to force them.
Oh,
I self-censor myself. I said,
I know, it's sad. It's sad. I had on Steve Kirsch on my video the other day, and he's kind of the Bill Gates of the anti-vaccine crowd, and people get shamed into these terms, anti-vaxxer. I've been called that. I've given out thousands, if not tens of thousands, of vaccines, and I have not really had a problem with it. I haven't seen that many problems with most of the childhood vaccines. But it's hard to do science as a physician when you're just seeing people. But and I used to take flu shots all the time. I'm not anti-vaxxer at any point, but I am anti-throw a vaccine at everybody simultaneously, whether or not have an illness, and throw it at them over and over again after the illness is gone. I'm anti giving a vaccine to people who've already had the illness, as Dr. Fauci was, and he should have stayed if he were honest. I'm anti dishonesty, and I'm anti wrong medicine. I'm anti one size fits all. I'm anti Maoist, and I'm anti
tyranny, government.
There you go.
Tyranny.
I'm anti tyranny, and so this gets placed as an anti-vaxxer. Now Steve Kirsch has views that are different from mine, but he's an honest broker. He says, I have a $5 million bet, and people can take any fraction of this. So they want to bet me 10,000, they could take any amount up to 5 million total. I'm willing to bet. If you can prove me wrong, you get your money as part of your bet, whatever you're willing to bet. But if I'm right, it's a bet. And so he's willing to put his money where his mouth is, but he gets labeled as anti-vaxxer. So my point is, I wanted to put this video up, but I've already had a YouTube channel destroyed based on very similar things. But a guy who said exactly the right thing. He said children should not be getting, he said in December, children should not be getting this vaccine any longer. They don't have any risk. They're not getting sick from COVID. We know enough now to say this. And he's absolutely right. And the WHO actually did exactly what he said 2 months later. They did it. But when I put his video up in January, my YouTube channel just disappeared. That's not quite Maoist, but it's like, it makes you have to rethink everything you do based on
it is Maoist. It's just lesser. And actually, many people say this, and I totally agree. And actually, I say it too. What's happening in America is Maoism with American characteristics.
Yeah,
it is Maoism.
Smiley face. I want to give people a chance to see your book, and I'm going to put it up here so people can get a chance and they can order and pre-order. So I love the cover. I'm going to do that first. So here's your book, Mao's America: Survivor's Warning. And so you can order / pre-order at Amazon, I assume, and it's going to be out in October. So this is a book, a must-have, and this is your dire warning. Can you tell us, give us a little teaser of what's going to be in your book, and maybe give us a summary of your thoughts and what your directives should be to people who don't necessarily want to be culturally revolutionized and want to kind of let the culture evolve rather than be devolve through revolution?
Yeah, this book is not a memoir, because there's so many memoirs. There are people who lived a more dramatic life during the Cultural Revolution than what happened to me, right? It's not a memoir. This is a book about the parallels of these two cultural revolutions. And so it's just let people see that many people were bewildered what happened to their country. And so what is this? This is all crazy. And this book will tell you this is nothing new. Everything that happened here happened before. And happened to me, and happened to millions of Chinese, and even to other victims of communism in other countries. And so I focus on culture because this is what we are really, we're not experiencing a bloody communist revolution to overthrow the government. What we're experiencing is a cultural revolution, as you probably introduced this to your audience of Antonio Gramsci, and it's a Italian communist.
Yeah,
and
that's our transportation secretary, Pete Buttigieg. His dad was the American expert on. He had written his thesis on Gramsci.
Yeah, his translator brought. So they are trying to definitely overthrow our country, but not through bloody revolution, but through cultural revolution, by capturing the institutions, by destroy our foundations and our values. And so, people can see that what happened to China is what happened here, and that is Marxist revolution. What we're experiencing is Marxist revolution. And so what do we do? First of all, you have to understand, right? You can't fight something you don't understand. I think this will help you to see that this is a Marxist revolution, and its goal is to destroy America, and the goal is for the elite, the globalists, to take power, just like Mao. And so with that understanding, I think people can then we expose it and tell other people, and then we resist. And that's my conclusion of what to do. We resist and we get organized.
Okay, so on a personal basis, locally we had a group called FAIR, FAIR, and to try to get people activated at the school board level.
Yes, I'm familiar with them. Yes.
Yeah. What does their acronym stand for? Do you know what it is?
I can't remember exactly. FAIR is a fight, but I know them. They are based in, I think they're nationwide, but they're based in New York City.
Yeah. And people need to fight this in the schools. I want to give a shout out. I had an author on last week, Scott Johnston, who wrote a book called Campus Land. That's one word, Campus Land, and it is hilarious and terrifying. It's basically the Marxist take over the universities, but it's the students they're protesting everything all the time, and
they're revolutionaries. They're revolutionaries looking for a cause, any cause.
Exactly. That's actually, there was a movie, Rebel Without a Cause. Marlon Brando, I think, was asked in that movie. He's a young rebel. He said, "What are you rebelling against?" He says, "What do you got?" That's a famous line from the movie. But a lot of times they don't know. They have to find causes because they're against something. They come up. A lot of our revolutionaries, the world's revolutionaries, they're not from downtrodden classes. They're not. They are intellectual babies. They're here they're called red diaper babies in Greenwich Village in New York City. They were babies of the quasi-intellectual bourgeoisie who inculcate communism in them, but they have the luxury to study and study. So a lot of your kind of Jean-Paul Sartre types, they're doing cafe house Marxism. Che Guevara was the son of a physician. Castro had a bourgeois upbringing. Most of these guys, they had the wherewithal. I think it was Ho Chi Minh, ditto, was in France, and so I guess he worked a little bit. But these are people who spent the time on an intellectual basis.
Including all the leaders in the CCP. Mao was from a rich family, and all the others are from land-owning families. They're all
and Trotsky, Leon Trotsky as well. There's some weird hatred. I think it has to. I don't want to get Freudian because I'm not a Freudian per se, but there's some hatred of their parents. Their jealousies. And I always see socialism as a politics of envy. I couldn't get this. You've made wealth. I can't figure out how to make wealth. The fact that you made wealth must be because you stole it. It couldn't be because you were entrepreneurial, because you worked hard, because you sweated, because you figured out everything. You banged your head against the wall 15 times before you found the right way.
That's how they get people follow them. It's using their greed and their jealousy. But those leaders, they're in for power.
Yeah. All right. So I'm going to call it a day here. I'm going to give you maybe 30-second last word, and I'm going to promote my book so people can promote this podcast.
Okay, I thought I just described.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
So that was good. So I'm going to show my book here. Let's see if I can find it. My book, it's got a picture of me on the cover. That's me. This is a book, Overturning Zika, the Pandemic That Never Was. So this is not that long ago. It's only 8 years ago, 2015-16 in Brazil. And this is a book about the pandemic that never was. Zika is a dengue virus causing microcephaly, which is a real problem, but it just so happens that one doesn't cause the other. But the world was overturned in Brazil at that time. People were told not to have children until there's a vaccine. There still has been no vaccine. If people listen to the WHO influenced experts, there would be no children under the age of 8 in Brazil and possibly other countries in Latin America. They gave bad advice. The maximum percentage of people who had gotten Zika, supposedly microcephaly, was only about 2 to 3 to 4%. It's unlike the other actual viruses that cause birth defects like rubella, German measles, caused about 100% of the time. So it was a bad disease formulation. Nobody backed down because, this is really sad to say, but there was a silver lining for the left with this illness, that they were going to be able to use it instantly to overturn the abortion constraints in Brazil and elsewhere in Latin America. So it was seen as it was put on the front burner because it could help destroy, kind of instantly change, revolutionize, as it were, the abortion laws, the anti-abortion laws in Brazil and so forth. So it kind of became a political cudgel, and a misuse of medicine. So this kind of politicization of science and medicine, this is something that's been going on. It will continue to go on unless we fight it. So not that we have, our interests don't align perfectly, but I think there are some similarities there, that science should be science, children should be children, families should be families. We should have the desires and ability to act through on those basic human desires, which are ancient and are worth conserving without feeding the kind of egotism and power grabs of people who are despots and would just soon churn us underfoot. Agree, disagree?
No, great, absolutely. Yeah.
All right. Well, it's been lovely having you. You and I can stay on for chat for just a minute, but we're going to say goodbye to everybody else. Thank you so much. Please go to Amazon, find G. Van Fleet's book, Mao's America, and hopefully it never will happen predictably, but it is a good prescription for people to use and learn from. And I'll just leave with the words of Ben Franklin, one of our founding fathers, who said about America, the United States, he said it's a republic if you